Hello and welcome along to VLGA Connect for another week. It is the first week of November. Our program brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers, and coming up today, news from across the sector and special guests discussing some of the current issues of interest to people across the local government sector. The biggest planning reforms in decades have been introduced to the Victorian Parliament. Our resident planning expert Julie Reid is here today to unpack the changes and explain what they mean for councils. Plus, we'll put the spotlight on one of the country's fastest growing areas. Shire Council's Mayor John Dougall joins me to talk about his community's priorities ahead of next year's state election. But first up, it's time for Connect News headlines. Well, a vacancy on Surf Coast Shire Council has finally been filled after 2 countback attempts. Well, 3 really, given that technical difficulty the first time out. Phoebe Crockett has won the second countback this week and has accepted the position, replacing the recently resigned Rebecca Burke. The City of Casey has acknowledged the conclusion of the 12-month term of municipal monitors Cameron Boardman and Peter Stevenson this week. Mayor Stephen Cooman thanked the monitors for their contribution to the return of councillors, saying the milestone marked the beginning of a new chapter for Casey. The Mayor of Wangaratta, Irene Grant, says council resources will be stretched thin preparing for the rollout of a solar farm development the community doesn't want. Councillor Grant was speaking after the Planning Minister approved the Meadow Creek Solar Farm against the wishes of more than 500 formal objectors, including the council. East Gippsland Shire Council has reversed its decision to stop paying insurance for Crown land facilities managed by volunteer committees. Mayor John White said the council will now pay this year's insurance and consult with the committees on future arrangements. Glen Eira Council has successfully secured a $3 million levy from the Melbourne Racing Club following a VCAT ruling. The tribunal's decision means the club will have to pay the money to the council as part of its plans to subdivide land at the historic Caulfield Racecourse. Yarra Ranges Council has uncovered technical errors in thousands of parking and animal-related infringements over the past 2 decades. An internal audit revealed parking fines issued between 2005 and 2025 were incorrectly charged, while animal infringements from 2014 to 2023 used invalid wording. The council is offering partial refunds for affected parking fines and full refunds for animal infringements. Central Goldfields Shire has secured an agreement with Vic Roads to continue operating a full-service agency in Maryborough. The deal ensures licence testing and vehicle inspections will remain available locally. One Gippsland representatives have been to Canberra this week for meetings with federal ministers and MPs. Chair Councillor Nathan Hersey and South Gippsland Shire Council CEO Alison Jones led discussions on disaster resilience funding, telecommunications coverage and offshore wind energy projects. And we have some mayoral election results for you from this week. Councillor Debbie Taylor-Haynes has been elected Mayor of Bayside City Council. The Beckett Ward representative steps up from Deputy Mayor and takes over from Hannah El-Mualim in the mayoralty. Councillor Dennis Heslin has been re-elected Mayor of Southern Grampians Shire Council. Councillor Helen Henry elected Deputy. Councillor Tim Mear has been re-elected to serve as Mayor of West Wimmera Shire for another 12 months. It's the 4th term in succession for Mr Mear in the role. And Councillor Helen Hobbs has been elected Deputy Mayor. In results from last night at Manningham, Councillor Jim Grievous has been elected Mayor with Councillor Deirdre Diamanti to support the new Mayor in the Deputy Mayor role. At the City of Melton, Councillor Lara Carley is the new Mayor. She served as Mayor twice before and Deputy Mayor on 3 occasions. Councillor Dr Philip Zada is the new Deputy Mayor. And at Mildura Rural City Council, Ali Cupper steps up from Deputy to Mayor. Helen Healy steps back from Mayor to Deputy Mayor. It will be the first time in the mayoral role for Councillor Cupper, previously having served as Deputy Mayor for 3 terms. That's the latest Connect News headlines. Well, here's a familiar face joining us on VLGA Connect. Lovely to have Julie Reid from LGX back, our resident planning expert, and there's a really good reason to call on Julie this week. Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
Hi, Chris. Great to be back and great to be talking all things planning.
Good to see you too. And we thought of you first, of course, when the Victorian government recently announced these major reforms. They've called it the biggest shake-up of planning legislation in decades. The response from the sector's been interesting, to say the least. So let's get the ready reckoner from you, if you don't mind. What is the government changing here with this legislation?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because I think this is actually partially a response to the Operation Sandon report, as you
Right.
know, the IBAC report involving Casey City Council. But I also know that this is a response to a commitment that they made to actually change the legislation. Now, the Planning Environment Act is an old piece of legislation, and I was sort of expecting that they were going to completely rewrite the legislation, completely.
Not
But
the
they
case?
haven't really done that. They've actually overhauled it. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of emphasis on housing development and
Yes.
fast tracking housing development in this change. And
So
so
it's sort
that,
of it's
yeah,
sort of creating some different pathways towards approvals and speeding up some of those, isn't it?
that's right. Yeah. So there's they're focusing on planning permits and planning scheme amendments, and there
Right.
are three parts to those sections.
Okay.
And the planning permit section, they're really breaking it down into three categories. So they're basically saying that where there is a single dwelling or a duplex, small scale development, that it's going to be a 10-day turnaround. There's going to be no notification of neighbours to speed up the process with this kind of small level development, okay? And there's
Hmm.
going to be no appeal rights, Chris. So there's going to be
Okay.
no appeal to VCAT on this kind of development. Then the same with the next category up, I suppose, are the townhouse type developments and the low-rise apartments, okay? And again, no notification, no appeal rights with those. That's going to be a fast track approval again. And I think they're talking around about 30 days for that. So
Right.
again, halving the time that it currently is 60 days under the Act for planning permits to be processed. And then the larger apartment buildings, they're saying, okay, with those larger apartment buildings, we're saying, yes, you need to notify the neighbours, those that are affected, and there will be appeal rights still with that, but they're still having the 60-day turnaround. So they're
So
breaking it
for
down
those,
into
just
those three levels.
yeah, so just to be clear, so that for the houses and the townhouses,
Yeah,
no appeal rights, not even an obligation to notify neighbours,
that's
an,
right.
an obligation to notify neighbours for the higher density
That's
apartment
right.
proposals. But in all of those cases, if you're not a neighbour, perhaps in those third example, beyond that, no one has the right to appeal or have a say.
That's right. Yeah. So you really need to be affected, and will have to be a judgment made about how, who gets notified, and it's going to be really directly affected people,
Yeah.
not somebody probably down the road, I suspect. But anyway, that'll be borne out in the way that it gets implemented, no doubt. But
That's a pretty,
there's a lot of control being taken away from the community
yeah.
around housing development, Chris.
And there's been a bit said about that, and we'll come to that in a moment as to
Yeah.
particularly what the peaks are saying.
Yeah.
Before we do that, you said there's also changes at the planning scheme amendment side.
Yeah, and planning scheme amendments came up a lot in the Operation Sandon report because, of course, they were talking about rezoning of land. Now,
Mm.
rezoning of land, they're still saying that that is a high impact. Okay, so they're still saying that high impact still is going to require the same kind of scrutiny, the same kind of panel deliberations, et cetera, et cetera. But what they've done is they've set about allowing some small scale sort of changes to the planning schemes. So, for example, if you wanted to shift a boundary of the zone, or if you wanted to say change a local policy within the planning scheme, that what they're saying is that there's going to be a less complex process for that. It's going to be a more fast track process, and there will be a different way in which panels will be engaged, if they are engaged at all. So there is going to be a change to that, which will mean simpler planning scheme amendments can go through in a much quicker time, which is probably welcome, Chris, because
Yeah.
it takes so long for councils to get these planning scheme scheme amendments through, and it's so frustrating, the complexity that they have to go through to justify. So let's hope it's all generally simpler for those smaller type amendments to the planning scheme, and it will just be probably much more welcome by the councils. However, those more complex things like rezonings are still going to be under a lot of scrutiny.
So unless things have changed, my recollection is, yes, there's a lot of work up front and complexity at the council end to get those amendments ready, but then they could sit in with the department and the minister for sometimes years before they actually came out the other end.
Yes, and there's been a bit of criticism of that from councils. I hear a lot of that when I travel around. They say that, the processing time from the department's point of view and the minister's point of view is slow. And, they're under pressure because they've got their communities saying, when's this change coming through? What are you doing? Why are you holding this up? Why is it taking so long?
Yeah.
So, it is very frustrating particularly for the staff and the councillors. Yeah.
All right, so they're the changes at a high level. How has this been received, Julie? I want to get your view on what a typical planner might think of this. But at the high level? What are the peaks saying? And I can guess the first one because I've seen a lot about this has come out of the blue with very little consultation.
Yeah. Well, the planners will all be going, oh my goodness, like when is this all going to come in?
Yeah.
What's the time frame? I did have a look around, and all I could see was that it was expected to be in operation by about 25th of November, Chris.
So that's quick.
They're all, if that's correct, I don't know, because obviously the bill's gone into Parliament. The planners are going to be going, what does this mean? How much work is this going to be? How are we going to prepare for all of this? How are we going to quickly get our heads around all of this? This is going to be complex to change our processes, because planners will have all these internal processes ready to go. They'll have to change all of those.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work for councils in changing all those processes and getting the flow of everything working again under this new change.
In an area that's already resource challenged.
Absolutely, Chris, and particularly in those rural councils where they don't have many planners anyway. So, this is going to be a real challenge for some of these councils. So I haven't heard too much from the councils at the moment. I reckon what they're doing at the moment is they're probably reading all the material and trying to digest and understand, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And they're starting to work on, how can we enact this change really quickly if this comes upon us, tomorrow almost.
Yep.
So
well, it
and
virtually is
probably
tomorrow.
a little bit frustrated that they haven't felt as though they've been consulted.
Yeah, agree.
So
So I know the MAV has called for really comprehensive parliamentary scrutiny of this because, of course, the government's got the numbers, so it's likely to go through quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And, the MAV have said that they're concerned that it's a closed shop approach to reform, and it risks the erosion of public trust in planning decisions and in government, in both levels of government. This is quite a significant shift. And they're also saying that they're worried that there's not really been proper consultation and a partnership structure. And we know that local government have been crying out for working with state government in partnership for such a long time, Chris. We know that they've wanted to try and get a new MOU up and work in partnership with government, and doesn't seem to be working. So we keep getting examples like this where it comes out of the blue and we go, where did that come from? Or it's well, we knew you were going to overhaul, the Act, but we thought you were going to involve us in that. We thought you were going to involve many different parties in that, So interesting, Chris, I focused on what the Planning Institute of Australia has said in Victoria, because usually they're fairly supportive of the government's reform of planning. And, I'd imagine there are some things that they actually are probably quite pleased about, streamlining the complexity. I'm sure that they're happy with that. But they came out and said that they had serious concerns about the bill. They said that it was a rushed process, and it's been very limited, open, transparent consultation, which risks undermining the integrity of Victoria's planning system.
Right.
So, they're worried about the integrity of the system. So they're calling for transparency and genuine engagement. They were calling for opposition to remove they are actually also in opposition to the removal of parliamentary oversight, which is it's a section of the Act that they're concerned about, which allows Parliament to scrutinise amendments. So they're
Right.
concerned about the removal of those. And they're also, they feel that there needs to be a more coherent policy reform framework that would then feed into the legislation. And they said, please pause and reset the process.
Mm,
So, but I
okay.
don't think that's going to happen, Chris, because
No,
once
it's
it goes
certainly
into Parliament, that's it.
that's right. It's certainly not going to happen. All right,
Mm,
that's a very useful take on
mm.
it. Julie, you're a former planner yourself. You've been a council CEO. You've sat in LGV as the executive director. What's your quick take on this? Do you think it's a step in the right direction, or is it going too fast?
Well, I think it's going too fast, Chris. I think that what I would have expected was a more holistic approach to dealing with the Act, because the Act is old and it needs to be reformed. And I would have thought that with much consultation and engaging peak bodies, engaging the industry, engaging local government, and getting a better um, Victorian planning system with a great deal of integrity is what I would have preferred
Mm,
to have seen. And I think this has been fast tracked through, particularly for the housing agenda. I understand the housing agenda is really important, but I just think that they're using that as a mechanism to get this through really quickly. And I am a bit worried about the integrity of the whole thing. There's
mm,
many, many things that need to be looked at in planning. And I think that we could have had a really sophisticated planning system with a lot of consultation and a lot of thought. Sure, it would have taken a lot longer, but I think at the end of the day, it might have been a better outcome, and people
mm.
would have engaged and supported the government on what would be a really a truly sort of genuine reform, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. Good to get your take on it. As always, thank you, Julie. All the best to you. We'll see, no doubt, more about this very soon as it makes its way through the parliamentary process.
Yeah,
Thanks
I'll
for
be
coming.
watching it
Yeah.
really carefully, and happy
Mm.
to come back and chat at any time, Chris.
Thanks.
Uh,
Thanks for
yeah,
coming on the
great.
show. Good to see you.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
Julie Reid from LGX. It's time now on VLGA Connect to put the spotlight on Mitchell Shire Council, and I'm pleased to have joining me on the program for the first time the Mayor of Mitchell, Councillor John Dougall. John, hello and welcome.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be with you.
It's good to meet you, and belated congratulations on being elected first-term councillor and first-term mayor straight away. Did you feel perhaps 12 months ago that you were getting more than you bargained for?
That's right, Chris. I really had no expectation it would end up that way. I was probably a week or two out from when the elections were announced and thinking, I've no idea if I'm even going to get in. And then a week later, your peers basically vote you in as mayor. It's a great privilege, and it's been an honour, to be honest, to
Yeah.
serve the community.
What was your motivation for putting your hand up to run for council?
Well, I have finished a career, if you like. I was in the army for quite some period of time. It was a great career, and it was time to move on to something different. I think I had generated some pretty good skills. I had a real interest in serving, serving the nation in a certain form, and
Mm.
now I had the opportunity, I guess, to sort of think through what I was going to do. A lot of my peers did a whole bunch of other different things, working for defence industry or a whole bunch of other sort of initiatives. But I wanted to stay local, and I wanted to serve in some sort of form. And I just sort of came across this local government thing and showed a bit of interest in it. I tried to understand what the process was and put my name down.
Good for you. And are you a long-term local there in Mitchell Shire?
Fairly long, I did get to post around a fair bit, but we did buy into this area from about 2001. So, yeah, between Kilmore and Broadford, we've been here a while.
Excellent. Well, there's no shortage of current issues to touch base with you on, but one of the big things we wanted to talk to you about was we recently noticed your council has gotten in pretty early and said what its priorities are ahead of the state election next year. How important was that for you as a team of councillors to narrow down those priorities now?
Very important, Chris, yeah. We need partners. We need to work with all layers of government. We've got a huge challenge on our hands here in Mitchell. You know, we are the next big growth frontier. We are going to be the home to an additional 200,000 people over the next 15 to 20 years. So the challenges there are enormous. The opportunities are huge. But we do want to put in place the basic pieces of infrastructure that are going to make our community thrive. So we are very keen that our advocacy priorities are transformational in nature. They need to be big ticket. They need to really draw the eye, and they need investment over a period of time. So we're very keen to sell those and make them very clear to both the federal and the state levels.
We hear various claims from councils around the state and around the country about the growth that they're experiencing. I think everyone's experiencing some form of growth, but you've been mentioned, Mitchell Shire, as one of the fastest growing regions in Australia. What does that mean on the ground for you and your council in terms of the pressures that must bring?
Yeah, we're certainly growing very quickly. It's over 6% growth per annum. And when I benchmark that across our sort of other neighbouring shires, even the interface shires, it is significantly higher. So, you know, change on that scale is a unique thing. You know, it brings opportunity, it brings investment. People are interested because there's a market there. But at the same time, it's very, very disruptive to an existing way of life. So people buy into an area because of its amenity, because of its attractions. And when they see that changing rapidly, it can cause some frustration. And we are most definitely dealing with that. It affects not just the southern towns, you know, Beveridge and Wallen, but every town across the Shire is going to be subject to some form of population pressure and the adjustments in the planning controls. So we're working with our communities as close as we can to understand their needs and to best represent those. But it is a difficult juggling act, and you know, we're trying to understand as much as we can on both sides of that sort of equation, the community needs as well as the sort of the drive that's coming to support this population target.
Yeah, and given what you've described, there's obviously assistance needed from both levels of government, but looking at the state angle just for a moment, what are if you're able to sit down with the Premier Jacinta Allen right now, what would the top asks be from you?
Well, we have 5 clear asks, Chris. So we'll quickly run through those. The first one is the Beveridge train station. So the bottom southern part of our shire, Beveridge is a home to over 11,000 people already. There is very limited bus public transport. The residents there need to travel either to Wallen or down to Craigieburn, Donnybrook area to catch the V line train service. So we think that an investment in the Beveridge train station is a huge unlocker for that community. It's appropriate. The land is available. It's been earmarked for a station. But it does need a commitment to purchase it and to construct the train station. We have figures about what that would cost, but certainly that is the highest on our list. The next advocacy priority is the Green Hill Recreation Precinct. Now, this is centred around Wallen, and it's a volcanic cone just on the southern edge of the town. And we see that as it's very adjacent to the existing football ground, but we want that to become a recreation precinct. And we're talking about a project over $350 million. It can be broken down into stages, but it would be swimming and athletics and gymnastics. It would have open space. It would have active open space. And it would be right there in the centre of Wallen, effectively. It would be incredible for that community. There is no pool within Cooee of this town. So we do think that population does need a facility of this type. So that's
those
a big
types
one.
of facilities, John, sorry to interrupt, those types of facilities tend to attract from beyond your immediate catchment as well, don't they? So that part of the argument as to the need that would service would factor into your ask, I assume?
Most definitely. So as I mentioned Beveridge just before, there is no facility of that type anywhere near there. Residents in the north would effectively need to travel down to Craigieburn to access their swimming facilities, which are already over capacity. So there's no way it can cater for our population growth. So an early investment in this, I think, is important. for the federal election, we were able to break it down into an initial package of about 45 million, which would get you a heated 25-metre swimming pool plus hydrotherapy, plus also a gymnastics facility. That's a great starting point, and from there the whole precinct can unfold. But getting services in and getting that initial investment is most important at the moment.
Yeah, you might be aware that Infrastructure Victoria has previously set a bit of a benchmark for what it sees as an appropriate level of investment from the state government in facilities like pools and libraries, etc. Is that what you're looking for from the state, or are you looking for them to go beyond that?
Look, we would take as much as we can, obviously, but we're going to be a home to 250,000 people over the next 20, 25 years. That's a population almost half the size of Canberra.
Yeah.
So if you benchmark against something like that, then yeah, we need a high-end aquatics facility together with all of the other regional sporting type hubs. Yeah.
It's a strong argument. What are those other priorities you've got there? You had a top 5, I think.
Yeah, so further to the north, up in Seymour, Seymour really is a hidden gem. It is well located right on the Hume Highway there, the train line as well. It's just that distance from Melbourne that makes it appealing. And we're looking at a Hildene employment precinct. There's land to the west of town, very close to the Hume, and we have identified that to be unlocked into industrial land, employment land. We have significant interest from various operators that want to move in. We've just effectively signed a lease with a significant operator that makes bridges that support the big build in Melbourne. So it has huge potential. So for us, growing the economy and attracting investment is a way of vitality across our communities. It provides good jobs. It gives people a reason to stay at school, to get the qualifications, and to work locally. So investments in something like a Hildene employment precinct are huge for us. And 2 more that we have, both in Kilmore, one of the oldest towns in the state of Victoria. We need a secondary school in Kilmore. There is Assumption College, a private Catholic school, but we do need a secondary high school in Kilmore. The population is significant. It is growing extremely quickly, and the residents in Kilmore need to travel to Wallan or Broadford to access a high school, a public high school. And secondly, a Kilmore bypass. I don't know, Chris, if you've driven north
yes,
recently toward Bendigo, but as you get toward Bendigo, you have to drive through, you leave the Hume Highway and you go through Kilmore. It's extremely narrow. It's sort of representative of that old community, very narrow street. But we've got big trucks, lots of trucks travelling right through the centre of town. And it's really making it difficult to invest in that kind of area for a business. So we've earmarked a bypass. It's been on the books for a long period of time. We have selected a route. The state government has identified land for public acquisition to support the ring road or the bypass. But yeah, we need a commitment to make sure that happens. It's been there for a long time.
Realistically, how confident are you that you would get all of those items on the list? You have prioritised them. I assume you've read them to us in terms of top to bottom in your top 5.
Yeah, they are effectively prioritised. In terms of confidence, we're confident that they will all happen.
Right.
They need to happen. It's a case of making the argument and persistently making the argument over a period of time. I can't say that they're going to happen tomorrow or that we'll get that commitment prior to the election, but we'll make sure we break that down into a manageable chunk of investment. And we'd like to see, cooperation between the state and the federal level toward big transformational projects that live in the heart of Victoria's next big growth area. So we think it's a reasonable ask.
So talking about big transformational projects that cross boundaries, you've had an announcement about Cloverton with some federal funding there, and this is a partnership with some of your neighbouring councils. Tell us a bit about the importance of this Cloverton announcement recently.
Yeah, it is, again, very important. It's right at the very southern edge of our Shire, Mitchell. Hume really hosts the Cloverton master planned community. And it's going to be, I think, Victoria's biggest. So it's a huge unlocker in terms of drawing in facilities and services that our community will enjoy. So we're looking at a university, we're looking at a hospital, we're looking at commercial land of a very significant nature. So that'll be a home to a range of infrastructure and services that our community will absolutely use. At the moment, many of us are drawn either to Bendigo Shepparton or to Craigieburn Epping. And so this is much further to the north. It's much more closely located to where our population is going to be. So yes, we're very much a partner with those other councils, Hume and Whittlesea, and we would like to see this to progress as quickly as it possibly can.
All of this that you've outlined really highlights the breadth of the community you have in Mitchell Shire, from the metropolitan fringe into the more rural sort of areas that you have. That must present significant challenges for a council of your type.
Exactly right, Chris. We would say that we are perhaps the only genuine peri-urban council.
Right.
If you think about all of the other peri-urban interface councils, their boundary fully extends an urban area. So whilst they may have been agricultural or sort of rural, semi-rural, they're now reasonably fully encompassed by an urban perimeter. Ours is very different. Our urban growth boundary is the bottom 4% of our land area. It'll be home to over 200,000 people, but the rest of the Shire is huge. So we have a huge road network. We have got very small towns that are genuinely rural, genuinely farming, genuinely agricultural. Yet we're also going to be part of the urban story in Melbourne. So it's a true contrast.
Yeah.
And that presents all sorts of challenges. So if you think about the road network, it's not just 40 kilometres of local roads being managed by an inner city shire. We've got 1,600 kilometres of roads. Half of them are unsealed. And so when you don't have the population density there, it makes it very difficult to find the funding to adequately service these types of assets. Same with clubs. You've got small towns, and they're trying to generate the interest and the numbers and the investment that would go into a refreshed sporting ground or to maintain a cricket oval, et cetera, et cetera. But without that dense population across the Shire, it's much more difficult to fund those types of things.
Yeah. You mentioned roads and the amount that you have in the different types. I noticed another shire, Gannawarra Shire, has recently published maps to show the community who's responsible for the different roads, because out in the country, as you would know, the complaints are coming thick and fast as road conditions deteriorate, and often the council cops the blame when it's not their roads. Do you have that problem in Mitchell Shire, differentiating between where the responsibility sits in terms of the community's understanding?
It's getting a lot better, Chris. We have an app. It's called, it's a feature on our My Mitchell app called Whose Road Is It?
Really?
Yes.
Excellent.
And it'll differentiate between all of the different types of roads, even forestry roads. So national, state, local government, emergency services, and even forestry roads. So yes, people do have very convenient access to work out, this is a Vic Roads, let's contact them. However, if they do contact Mitchell, we will pass that on to Vic Roads based on the community feedback that we get. But yeah, really understanding where those responsibilities lie, I think is important because that way people are going to be held more accountable for the assets that they maintain.
Yeah, so that's obviously been an issue that you've addressed with that feature that you've got in the app. Which
Oh,
is
most certainly.
Yeah,
this is a recent innovation to address a common concern. Yeah.
Excellent. Good to know. And talking about things that aren't the council's responsibility, but you cop the blame for, can we just touch on the ESV levy? I know your council's taken a pretty strong stand. As the horse bolted here after the gate's been shut?
There's always room to improve an outcome. So the state government is pretty clear that this is an important feature of funding emergency services into the future. We think that it disproportionately affects rural areas, agricultural, farming type areas. However, it also has an impact on residential and industrial land as well. So all of the rates that are payable go up fairly significantly. So we don't agree that this is the right tax. It has a huge impact on people. Given the volume of money that it collects, I think there's a far better way of sort of, capturing money. And secondly, we don't like the fact that the local government sector is collecting it and then distributing it to the state government on behalf of the residents. So we don't agree with the nature of the tax and also the fact that we are the collection agency for it. We are pleased that they have put on hold the increase for the farming zone areas. And we do hope that in the lead up to the next state election, that in fact they remain at the current level and that they don't exercise that jump that they have previously identified.
Yeah. All right. Perhaps one last question before I let you go, John. Illegal dumping. I know that's a big issue for many, and your shire is no different there. How is your Dob in a Dumper campaign going?
Oh, it's going quite well. We believe the message is getting out. It is a very serious problem. I think you'd be aware. So similar problems faced by other growth areas, such as Hume Whittlesea to our south. So we're happy to share information with them about what works and what is not working. It does tend to happen in those areas that are subject to development. A lot of this is related to building and commercial type waste and dumping. So yes, there's some residential occurring, but mainly it's in relation to that sort of demand by development. We have employed additional asset protection officers. We are taking enforcement very seriously. We are posting people basically in the south to continually monitor the situation. We've tried innovative methods such as we trained one of our employees had an idea that we could use UAVs to provide surveillance. And so they went off and did the training, and we leased a UAV with cameras and
these are drones basically.
Drone UAVs, yeah. So these sort of cameras can identify, the registration plate on a vehicle from quite some distance. Now we've done that in collaboration with the police, so it's been a joint operation. We have undertaken, I think, 2 flights now, and it's been a real deterrent, I think. The fact that we posted the video that we used for the first flight, it got something like 130,000 hits on Facebook. So we do think that the word is out. We do think the community have our back. They want us to clean this up. And we are going to take enforcement very seriously. We have matters that are going through the court system at the moment. So we're not going to hold back on that. It is important. And, I think the community expect us to do everything we can.
Yeah. So the state government recently announced some money. I think it was upwards of $20 million for this illegal dumping issue. Are you going to see any of that to help offset the costs that you're incurring, do you think?
Yes, we will. Yeah, I believe that $8 to $9 million of that 20 were going to go to local governments. Our job has been to make sure that Mitchell get its fair share. So not only are we a large area, but we're right on that area where development is occurring. And that tends to be the hotspots for this type of dumping. So we will be pushing hard to make sure we get our fair share and they don't simply divide it by 79.
Yeah, indeed. John, it's been great to talk to you about all those issues. You're right across the stuff. You're so knowledgeable. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm wondering whether in a couple of weeks' time you're going to be putting your hand up for another term as mayor, because it seems to fit you well, if I may say. Chris,
look, I have really enjoyed the year. People often ask, what's it like, and I say, it's been a great opportunity. It's been an incredible learning experience. Some of it I'm very familiar with, though. So that side of it I'm comfortable with. The other side of it, though, I was completely out of my depth and had to learn very quickly. Yeah. But having learned a bit, I am interested and I would like to continue, but only if I get the support of my peers and if I feel like I can do the right thing by the community.
Well said. All right. Well, good luck to you. We look forward to hearing the outcome of that later in November. But it's been great to talk to you today on VLGA Connect, and thank you for being so generous with your time.
No problem, Chris. Great to be with you.
That almost brings us to a close for this week's VLGA Connect. Don't forget you can keep up to date with news from across the sector, both in Victoria and beyond, on the Local Government News Roundup, a 3 times a week podcast that you'll find wherever you get your podcasts, and it's sponsored by the VLGA, which is also conducting its mayoral leadership program with mayors and deputy mayors being selected now and over the next few weeks. It is the time to have a look at that program and how it can help you as a new mayor perhaps, or a new deputy mayor, meet your obligations and be as effective in the role as you can be. If you'd like to find out more about the mayoral leadership program, contact the team at the VLGA. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching on YouTube and listening on podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes. And we'll be back with more VLGA Connect next week, sponsored by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. Until then, bye for now.